So many times guys would just like look at each other the wrong way and like brawls would start. Like that's how got instigated way too easily when I think back to high school days. Like people would just like look at each other for more than like 1 second and it'd be like, I hate you now. You looked at me way too long and now we have beef. Now we have to fight. What's up guys, Derek, moreplates.com. Today we're going to be reacting to a Reddit thread I was sent, and apparently it is relevant to the video I just did on the kid who is 14 years old who ran Tren. So this is titled Trenbolone Precursor Use at a Young Age. My story relates to the kid claiming to run Tren at 14. So, you know, obviously we don't know if that kid actually ran Tren or he was just claiming it. He said SARMs and Tren. Even if it was just SARMs, it's still fucked up, obviously. The thing I found kind of weird though is some people are like, nah, he was just saying it to get clout. And I'm like, well, if you're claiming you use Tren at 14 and then you get the attention you wanted from it, why would you then delete your channel? You know what I mean? So if he was actually attention seeking from it, why would his subsequent response be delete my entire channel and not have anybody follow my shit? You know what I mean? Like that is the only logical conclusion you could think would come if your video blew up, is if you said you were on Tren at 14, people would come shit on you, and then you either, you know, take the small amount of followers out of that you think you would have, you know, benefited from by making this like bold claim, or if you actually ran Tren, then maybe you'd be like, wow, like I'm actually a dumbass and like delete your whole channel. I don't know, dude, but I mean, like it seemed kind of weird for like, why would somebody claim I ran Tren for clout, and then once you actually get the attention that you were trying to get, delete the whole fucking channel? So for me, you know, I'm pretty sure the kid ran fucking something. I don't know if it was Tren for sure or not, but either way, you know, the information was still super relevant and would still apply for anybody who was running anything suppressive at age 14. Probably not good, you know, for the exact same reasons. Obviously 19 nor like Tren, far more problematic and far worse, but the same shit still applies for SARMs and stuff like that kids are, you know, actually doing too. So anyways, a really long post, but I feel the need to write this because I want to serve this as a warning. Share this if you want. What I'm writing is extreme here and won't happen to 99.9% of people who run Tren at a young age, but there have been long-lasting effects. I was diagnosed with Asperger's and OCD at a very young age, and to be honest, someone in my mental state should never touch 19 nors at all. I think a lot of us probably shouldn't touch, you know, Tren at all, to be honest, and many 19 nors, they're pretty problematic for certain individuals. And Tren specifically, you know, not many people can run it. Even the people oftentimes that think they're fine when they're on it, they just don't realize like how off they really are. But, you know, some people I guess can run it fine, but for most it's not the best. Running gear at a young age is bad for several reasons. Running Tren especially is destructive because Trenbolone doesn't only bind to androgen receptors, it binds to GABA receptors, cannabinoid receptors, presumably, estrogen receptors, glucocorticoid receptors, presumably. The reason why Tren makes you so anxious, angry, isn't only because of its sheer androgenic activity, it's all the other receptors that get fucked with. Trenbolone also seriously stunts your body's ability to remove amyloid plaque buildup, leading to neurotoxicity and other issues. Trenbolone is unlike any other androgen we know of. Yeah, you know, so there is a lot of stuff we've extrapolated, like the beta amyloid plaque buildup, and I hypothesized it might have had to do with estrogen deficiencies and different things of that nature, as well as the inherent neurotoxicity of the compound. We don't really know for sure what it actually does in humans, obviously, but it's obviously not good. You know, it is one of the worst mental state compounds there is, and as well as its direct stress on multiple organ systems in the body. And yeah, it has a lot of broad spectrum interaction with glucocorticoid receptors, inherently activates estrogen receptors, stuff like that. So yeah, makes sense, yeah. He didn't mention its effect on progesterone receptors, which is interesting because it is literally a progestogenic agent, and that is one of the main issues with it too. Well, I guess it depends on what you consider an issue or a benefit though, because some of its anabolism may indeed be driven through this pathway of activating progesterone receptors. So anyways, my story: in the summer of 2018, a friend messages me and asked for Novadex. The reason he asked me was because I had tried several times before to source gear from several people without success. I've been lifting since I was 14 and I was pretty buff compared to most guys who were lifting my age. A lot of people thought I was on gear and he probably thought as well. He wanted the Novadex because he had just finished a cycle of Epistan. I've been researching gear for years. It's my Spurg special interest, sadly, and I had never heard of Epistan. I thought it was BS. I researched it, and I got introduced to the world of pro hormones. I had been wanting to run gear for a long time, and I saw an opportunity. I had never heard of pro hormones before he mentioned Epistan. I was reading all the roid forums where the only drugs discussed were Test, Winnie, VAR, Tren, the mainstream ones. I knew orals only was stupid. I would have ran a test cycle if I could have sourced it, but I couldn't. Pro hormones I could buy from supplement stores in Europe and get it sent to my door without any Bitcoin or going onto shady forums. I couldn't even source Novadex for PCT, but I didn't care. My life was about lifting weights. And my reason was that I would be running gear later in life, so I didn't care if I was shut down. Eventually I would blast and cruise, and that's what I do now. Yeah, I'm only 20, but it's my choice. Getting shut down was the least of the problems that came from it. I am 100% sure if I had ran something else, I wouldn't have got the issues I got. Well, here's what happened. I started at 30 milligrams of Trendione, which is a pro hormone that converts to Trenbolone and probably some other metabolites. I started with the strongest shit I could find because I wanted to get ridiculous results. Interesting thing, a lot of the people don't realize that Trenbolone is actually orally bioavailable. It was actually used in the Duchess cocktail by the Russian doping regimen. That state-sponsored doping program that you actually saw in Icarus probably, or at least you heard about it. In passing, they didn't discuss the actual cocktail itself, but they were using basically a solution that had 3 different oral steroids in it. One of them was actually just straight up Trenbolone, and it can indeed be absorbed through the mucosal membrane and achieve decent enough serum concentrations in order to achieve a performance enhancing effect, despite, common belief that certain compounds, you can only inject it to get the benefit. Trenbolone indeed is a bit unique in that area, I guess. It can actually achieve some oral bioavailability, even if taken orally, not, sublingually, which is a totally different method of administration. But anyways, I started with the strongest shit I could find because I wanted to get ridiculous results. After a couple of days, I could notice a difference. After 2 weeks, people at the gym are accusing me of being on shit. My arms grew by 1.5 to 2 centimeters by this time. At the end, I had 43 centimeter arms. Not impressive considering I am 184 centimeters tall. I tapered up the dose and went up to 180 milligrams. I ran it for a total of 9 weeks. I stopped when I was shitting. When I was shitting blood. No joke. By week 2 to 3, a lot of Trenbolone's mental sides hit me as a truck. So, it's interesting how some of the over-the-counter stuff was actually the most toxic stuff. I don't know if you remember M1Ts back in the day were even sold over the counter, one of the most shitty fucking orals ever. And, kids in fucking high school are popping the shit like candy. People are popping Superdrol, which at least I guess is a decent compound, but I mean, the dosages people were using, the duration of exposure, it was fucking brutal, dude. And some of the compounds were just dirty, abandoned garbage compounds. Like M1T, personally, I thought that was a terrible compound choice for majority of people, and it was readily available though, so people were, buying it up and using that shit at fucking 16 years old. I tapered up the dose and went up to 180 milligrams. Oh yeah, shitting blood. The shitting blood part hit me as a truck. The aggression was unreal. It's the worst rage I'd ever had 10 times, no fucking joke. The paranoia was extreme as well. I started to get gang stalking delusions. I thought, I'm just laughing because I can totally relate to the Trenbolone. It wasn't this bad, but I mean, you would definitely get paranoid about shit that doesn't exist. I thought people at my school had made a Facebook group where they were discussing me and mocking me. A girl in my class smiled at me and I went ham. I immediately thought that she was smiling because she was thinking about a joke they wrote about me on that Facebook group. Looking back, she smiled at me because she was in my class and we were friends, but I was actually that delusional that I couldn't recognize this. See, it's you don't get at the time when you're on Tren that some of the shit you are doing and thinking is not what you would normally do. So it's even though you think you're unaffected, oftentimes these individuals that are oh, I tolerate it so well, you're not actually behaving the exact same way that you think, because it's your brain is actually significantly fucked with when you're on it. And some people can't recognize that they're behaving and thinking in patterns that are very, very odd compared to their regular behavior. And they just accept it as, this is normal and I tolerate the drug exceptionally well. So he says, I won't get into much detail, but look up gang stalking on YouTube. I was having these same delusions and they completely evaporated within days of quitting Trendione. The worst incident was when a poor kid at my school held his phone in a way that sort of looked like he was taking pictures of me. I thought he was taking pictures for the Facebook group that was intent on destroying my life. I run up and snap his phone out of his out of his hand and smash his phone. Why I wasn't kicked out of school, I have no idea. No fucking idea. At home, my mom couldn't say a single word to me without me going into an uncontrolled rage. She was the most annoying, nagging bitch ever. So was my sister as well. I was never violent during this period. And one of the things you notice with Tren too is like everyone you're just like, you're very short with, like people you should otherwise be respectful to, people in your family that have, you know, treated you well and fucking brought you up and like raised you, you'll just be like a huge dick to for no reason. And they're just saying something normal. You're like, oh my fuck, like shut the fuck up. Let's see. I was never violent. There were several times I was that close from just going completely, he loves the word ham on people. I had delusions that people were out to get me, so I started to go around with a knife everywhere I went. I remember our particularly incident on the bus on the way to the gym, and some guy glanced for a short moment at me and it ticked me off the wrong way. The few minutes left of my bus ride, I was seriously considering murdering him. Holy fuck. It wasn't a fleeting idea. I was actually weighing the pros and cons of doing it. This is by far the scariest moment looking back. This is one of the worst things I used to see like back in the day in high school. It was like, I don't know, it was like the combination of raging hormones and then guys on gear too. If you're at a gym, like a new gym that wasn't your home gym or something, or new guys came into your gym and, you know, one guy was like sort of big and there was another guy in your group who's like the alpha fucking dude of your gym. So many times guys would just like look at each other the wrong way and like brawls would start. Like that's how shit got instigated way too easily when I think back to high school days. Like people would just like look at each other for more than like 1 second and it'd be like, I fucking hate you now. You looked at me way too long and now we have beef. Now we have to fucking fight. Like it was so ridiculous. Some of the shit back then. And then, you know, you throw gear into the mix, it's not good. Let's see. My OCD was getting worse and worse. I previously only dealt with thought loops, but now I was checking the front door almost every quarter of an hour or more frequently to check it was locked, checking if the stove wasn't on, checking I hadn't left the water fountain running, etc. My anxiety was also in overdrive. I couldn't go into a store if there was too many people, and I was scared to go to school, scared to go home because I thought my siblings were on the Facebook group thing. My mental state has never been the same after that run. I feel like my memory has severely been affected. I used to be a sponge that could soak up information, but now I have short-term memory issues and I have to reread things over and over again before it sticks. Overall, I feel a lot dumber. Combined with me having Asperger's, I feel like a retard and it severely affects my confidence. I generally feel like my Asperger's has gotten way, way worse. I spent a huge chunk of my teen years learning social skills and I feel like a lot of that has gone to waste. The OCD that before was only thought loops now encompasses checking OCD and it has seriously affected my life negatively. A lot of my life is spent checking stupid things. The thought loops that I have now are worse and are generally way more negative. Disgusting, intrusive thoughts that won't stop unless I hyper-focus or I pop benzos. I never dealt with anxiety before Trendion. OCD is a type of anxiety, I know. But now I worry about my family all the time. I get panic attacks whenever my phone rings, etc. I hang out less with my friends because I always think everyone hates me even though there logically is no reason for it. I constantly second guess every decision I make. My sex drive also is nowhere it used to be. This has nothing to do with shutdown. I'm on TRT dose of tests now and blasted high doses and the issues persist. It's like a switch turned to my brain and I identify as asexual now because I literally have no interest in girls. I have seen other anecdotes of people suffering this side effect from nandrolone and Tren on some other forums, so this isn't exclusive to me. A lot of the guys suffering this ran 19 Nords at a young age or during puberty. Physically, during the cycle, I was holding a fuck ton of water, especially around my face and ankles, so this makes me question if I was actually sold Trendione or if there was some other drug, because water retention from Tren is unheard of. My strength gains on compound lifts during the cycle was abysmal, as in like a good thing. But on isolation movements, okay, so his lift didn't go up. But I thought he meant like abysmal, as in like so bad it was like sick. But on isolation movements, almost sounds like something I'd say, like fucking ridiculous. But on isolation movements, I was twice as strong. I have no explanation for why. Every cycle afterwards, I gained strength equal to compound to isolation. I have no idea if it helps, but I wanted to mention it. I had brutal hair loss during the cycle, regressed several Norwood. I started the big three and my hair has grown back despite me blasting other shit. Thanks. More plates, more dates. I never trained my traps because I honestly think it looks stupid having 2 lumps by my neck. but they, with my delts, grew so much during the cycle and now they dominate my physique. The only positive thing I got out of this was permanently huge delts. I also got a lot of cystic acne and my back has large potholes in it now. During the cycle, I had serious issues with cardio and I was always huffing and puffing. I feel like some permanent damage has happened. It's not like I have bad cardio, it's like there was less O2 in the air. You know that feeling when you were high up on the mountains and the air is thinner? I feel like that constantly and I get comments all the time that I am breathing heavy. This is despite me being able to run for long periods of time. I've never heard of this happening from Tren use. It could all be in my head, but I feel like I have to mention it. Take from this what you will. I just wanted to lay out everything in one long post. I deeply regret my choice of compound use. I am 100% sure if I had ran something else, this wouldn't have happened. I have been researching Trenbolone and Nandrolone a lot the last couple months to try and get an understanding of what has happened to me. Trenbolone is a fucking horrible drug. It's neurotoxic as fuck. And if it's used in young people, it can have horrible long-term effects. I've scoured the internet and I find the occasional anecdote from a teen or young adult running Tren or Nandrolone and suffering permanent mental or physical issues. I saw MPMD video of the 14-year-old and felt compelled to share my story. If you are a teen and want to cycle it, don't do it. But if you're going to do it, don't touch any 19 nor. I don't care if it's Tren, Nandrolone, Ment, Max LMG, Dienolone, Diendione, or whatever. If it's 19 nor, wait till you are at least 45. Damn, dude, it's quite the story. So let's go through some of the comments in a sec. So one thing I want to mention is, well, obviously we have no idea what you ran. In addition to that, whatever you were running, obviously shut down your HPTA and consequently had no estrogen during the entire cycle. So if you're on a base of Trendione or something else that is not a substrate for aromatase, you know, that is going to significantly exacerbate any kind of mental side effects you're going to get from it. Like having zero estrogen is the worst fucked up feeling ever. Like you literally feel like life sucks and you are also asexual. You don't give a fuck about chicks at all. Like I remember when I was, the last time I ran letrozole, I was like peak PUA phase and I had like a strong rotation of chicks that I thought were very high quality and I literally just like ghosted them. Like it was totally uncharacteristic of me to ghost girls I had spent like weeks building up this rotation with, and I was like, I literally do not care about females. Like that's what the letrozole did to me when I intentionally crushed my estrogen to zero. I just like stopped giving a fuck whatsoever, eliminated all contact to the opposite sex immediately. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if that played into it to some extent, at least at the time. Obviously that's an acute thing. So now you in a TRT phase, what is the cause of your problems? Let's get into that after I read through some of these comments. Sup guys, Derek, moreplates.com. I do say that. Can somebody please tag him or send him this thread? Somebody did, so here I am. Time to PCT. Yeah, I didn't see anything about a PCT in here, so that would be the first thing to find out. I just fucking spit all over my screen, but it's fine. I mean, I'm taking a 19 nor right now, and honestly speaking, I have absolutely zero of any of these sides you mentioned. Yeah, like obviously this is a low chance of happening, but like, you know, I also would take the warning, you know, no teens should be using 19 nors. Like frankly, most teens probably shouldn't be using anything because they haven't educated themselves thoroughly enough to actually make proper use of these drugs, as well as like make the most of them and not fuck themselves up potentially. You know, like the likelihood you're gonna fuck yourself up is, you know, relatively low, but I mean, you only have so many blasts in the tank. You wanna do the blast in your tank when you can actually make the most use of those blasts in the tank, when you can actually maximize the progress and minimize the deleterious impact of them. So, you know, if you're like 1 year into fucking lifting and you're just learning about gear for the first time, you know, it's probably not the best idea to jump on anything, to be honest, regardless of how mild it may seem. Let's see, unless you want to be a Gymshark athlete. It sounds like you had pre-existing conditions. And so like everyone has a different neurological profile. So saying, you know, this will do this, it's kind of impossible. Certain people have different, you know, expression of certain receptors in the brain. Different people have different predisposition to rate limiting steps in neurosteroid synthesis. There's a lot of shit that plays in that's individual specific. So it's like for one guy that gets, you know, severe anxiety from something, another guy may be on the complete opposite of the spectrum. Obviously with Trenbolone, it's a bit different, but I mean like, well, at least for most people, but I mean, in general, like this guy is trying to give a warning though of like the worst case scenario kind of thing. So like, I totally understand why he's saying it. Everyone else is kind of, you know, skeptical because it's individually dependent, which is a fair point to make. But this guy, I feel like the point he's trying to make is more so like in the worst case scenario, what could happen? So, anyways, did you ever PCT? What does your blood work look like? Let's see. I ran Tren at 19 and worst sides I got was acne and getting too strong, torn hamstring, went up to 600 milligrams a week. I remember punching a locker because I flirted at the gym and the chick leaves before I see her again to get her number, all the while having a girlfriend. Rage is no joke. Okay, so for this guy, the thing I would say is it sounds like you might have some neurological imbalances to begin with, and obviously this would stem back to, what's your diet practices, what's your lifestyle, what's your sleep hygiene like, do you have any massive stressors in your life right now that could be compounding things? And in addition to that, when it comes to TRT, you have to understand when you're shutting down your HPTA, you're also down regulating certain processes like steroidogenic acute regulatory protein, which dictates, how much cholesterol is used to actually go through the steroidogenesis cascades and actually create certain neurosteroids that then produce the GABAergic, steroids that then actually make you calm down or get into a parasympathetic state and get out of that, fight or flight mode that Tren would perpetually put you in. So for you, it's entirely possible you just have certain deficiencies upstream. And maybe, I actually did a video with Leo and Steve recently on HCG on cycle. It's entirely possible you may benefit from almost like a similar protocol to a post-finasteride syndrome patient. Maybe you actually do need TRT. I don't know what your, hormonal state is like. And if you choose to be on TRT because you actually want to be replacing your T or because you think you need to or what the actual situation is. But regardless of what it is, if you're on exogenous TRT, something to run by your doctor, obviously not me, you would run it by your doctor. Something that may, be worth exploring further would be HCG and maybe lowering the TRT. For me, if this was me, I would be thinking, okay, is there something that I can do to backfill all those pathways that may otherwise be deficient and or imbalanced? Because for you, clearly the mental state is a big deal. And when you just add testosterone into the mix, you're not really addressing the full cascade. You're addressing the bottom of it. You're backfilling one pathway and not addressing the entire steroidogenesis cascade as a whole. You could have some massive deficiencies in allopregnanolone, TH-DOC, I don't fucking know, a lot of things upstream, progesterone, things that would otherwise produce, relaxation, help your mind actually chill the fuck out. So for me, I'm not saying you should do that, by the way. I'm just saying anecdotally, I've seen some interesting results from the incorporation or at least, delving into that area of research. So that might be worth exploring with your current TRT doctor is looking at HCG concurrently with your TRT, at least acutely, to then address the neurosteroid potential deficiencies. I don't know, for me, that would be a viable thing to at least explore because you're certainly not going to resolve anything except for androgen deficiency with the exogenous TRT. You're not actually backfilling anything up here. You're just hitting, keeping your manual, 1,000 nanogram per deciliter total and you're, 30 free or whatever it is. And your DHT is higher, which is, great for neurological health and whatnot. But at the end of the day, as well as your estrogen levels, which obviously, maybe some of the problems were derived from estrogen deficiency during the cycle too, which should be all resolved now on TRT. But in addition to that, we don't know if your TRT protocol is dialed in. We don't know if you have, imbalance of estrogens to androgens, free androgens to free estrogens, and upstream, we don't know what the neurosteroid cascades are like, So that is what I would look at personally, especially it sounds like you have a fairly, a reasonable understanding of GABA receptors, different receptors in the body. You understand it's not limited to just the AR, and there are different things to look at. So that is what I would look at. Maybe you did throw something off, similar to a post-finasteride syndrome patient, So definitely something to explore. And, it's shitty to hear. And I'm sorry to hear you, went through that, especially after one fucking cycle. So, and yeah, obviously anybody who is young watching this video, heed his advice in terms of do not take Tren as a teenager. Just not a good idea. And ideally don't use gear at all. The likelihood that you're going to be educated enough to actually intelligently deploy these compounds in the most risk-averse method while maximizing the efficacy, very, very low when you're a teenager. You have to do years of research, in my opinion. And I know that sounds, overwhelming and cumbersome, but to be honest, I've been researching for fucking, 10 plus years at this point. I'm still learning. My knowledge from a couple of years ago pales in comparison to what it is now. And, hopefully in a few years, it pales in comparison to what it is, right now. So, to actually I would recommend waiting personally. So, and yeah, that is it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. All the comments help the algorithm, so they're much appreciated. Like, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram at @moreplates_more_dates, Facebook, Snapchat, BitChute, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts. If you want to support the channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below, including my TRT clinic. It's all telemedicine from the comfort of your own home. If you're an individual who did a dumb cycle, or you did something that fucked up your endocrine parameters, or you just naturally, you have, you're symptomatic and you think that something might be wrong, or you just want to get accurate diagnostics and an intelligent interpretation of your diagnostics, I would highly recommend you check out my TRT clinic. All the PCCs and doctors are highly qualified, and I vetted them myself for that exact reason. And anything else I'm associated with is all in the video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.